Hello and welcome to the BurnCast. I'm Brady Byrne.
And I'm Kim Cass.
Today we're looking at a book called Hard Target by author Zeke Mitchell. As always, any criticisms directed towards the authors and works that we discuss are exaggerated for entertainment purposes and are not meant to be taken personally. Thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show. Let's talk about Hard Target.
Let's talk about Hard Target. Let's do it. I'm ready.
I say this with complete sincerity that this is the best book we've read on the show so far.
Absolutely. And for a book with no commas in it, how that is possible, it mystifies me. But this is the best book by, not just best book, but best book by a quite a considerable margin.
Yeah. We're talking story, we're talking prose, we're talking content. This is the best book that we've read so far. Easily.
And it's really funny because I still wouldn't describe this as a good book. You know, it's not like a go to the local bookstore kind of thing. But if you're looking to read something that's perhaps unintentionally funny, but still readable, this is the dream choice. It really is. And I really did enjoy reading it. I think that it was easy, it was comfortable, and I actually laughed a couple times.
Yeah, and we're not going to get through this episode without comparing it to several of the other books we've talked about, because I would describe this book most precisely as the book that Bucket Full of Bullets should have been.
Yes.
And the book that China Strike is trying to be.
Oh yeah, big time. And this book actually executes it well.
Yes.
It knows what it is, and it does the job. And it doesn't give you anything else.
No.
It doesn't faff around with any big ideas or any bullshit.
No.
You came here for the guns, you came here for the hard target, and this is what you're gonna get the whole way through.
And you leave in a bloody mess of scarlet pulp.
Oh yes. Every single bullet cores its opponent, sends them in a dazzling display of death. And it's funny because usually you might give a notable character, like a huge death scene where you can really describe it, but every single person he shoots gets at least a little paragraph where he gets ripped to shreds and then his head explodes or something like that.
Yeah.
And considering how many people he shoots, it's you get a lot of those descriptions.
Yeah. Whereas the other books are indulgence for the sake of indulgence, this is indulgence with a purpose. And that purpose is to get you from the start to the end as fast as possible and to shoot your adrenaline up to its highest point. You sit down, you read this book in an hour and a half, and you come out and you're fucking hyped up, man.
Oh, yes. It's so funny because there's usually a start, middle, and end in most books. This book is just one long action scene.
Yes.
From the first to the end. And it also reads a little bit like he's some sort of lobbyist for some sort of gun company or something like that.
Yeah, it does kind of read like that.
Because every single piece of equipment that he has is not only named specifically, usually given an acronym, and then the acronym is explained what it is, but he actually uses it, you know?
It tells you what its purpose is, yeah.
It's like Chekhov's gun, except that every little tiny pouch, every little tiny grenade he has, everything
is put to effect.
Yeah, he loads everything up, and then he's going to use everything at least once. And a couple other things that you didn't hear about. They'll be used as well. It's non-stop.
Yeah, he's talking about cobalt steel tungsten rounds and tumbling black talon machine gun pistols,
Nikon tactical binoculars and mole pouch Kevlar power strike ammo. It's all just non-stop. Ultimax Commando light machine gun.
It's a constant.
It had a 12.5-inch hammer, forged barrel with an ACOG scope. It fed a 100-round drum loaded with a power strike. It's just so good. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's constant. And whereas China Strike did the whole telling you what everyone has on them at every moment, and you're just kind of whatever, it doesn't matter. Every single weapon and piece of equipment is put to fucking effect.
Yes.
And it's not shut down or muddled by any bullshit. I think there's 3 lines of dialogue in this whole fucking story, and everything else is a gunfight. The things that take place between gunfights are gunfights. That's it. That's all you get. That's all you want.
It's so funny because there are a few times where he does actually interact with someone.
Yeah.
But the interactions are usually wordless something or other, and then someone gets shot. Literally, he goes to meet an informant who's strangely named Chang.
Yeah.
We run into a lot of Changs and Shins and things like that in our books.
Yeah. We'll never escape China Strike. It's with us forever now.
But he runs into this informant, parks up next to him in a car. He's literally the only character you've seen aside from the specialist, who's just a nameless super soldier. And you meet this guy, And immediately he gets shot up. He doesn't say anything. He just gets shot up. He tells him one location and then just boom, boom, boom. Some Russian thugs come and just shoot him out of nowhere.
Yeah. Whereas this in China Strike would be like a 6-page scene where he meets the informant and they have this dialogue and he's like, oh, can I trust your information and all this shit?
Can I trust you?
This is like 3 lines. They meet up, the dude gets shot, specialist gets his information, and he's on the go.
Yeah.
That's it.
And he's always charging up that HEMI, his Jeep.
Yeah.
His Jeep has got a V8 HEMI, and he makes sure to utilize that power.
Yeah.
Every single half scene you get there, and he jumps back into the HEMI roars. It's funny because this book is a masterpiece of describing things.
Yes.
It really is. This man has put in so much. Zeke Mitchell, I applaud you.
Great fucking job.
Yeah, the whole way through.
This story is, despite not really having a story, but it knows what it is and it executes it with the efficiency that the specialist executes his fucking Pravda victims. That's what it is. The book itself is a reflection of the author's technical skill.
Yeah.
And it's not like Apocalypse Deception where the author is trying to insert themselves into the story. This is the story reflects the author in the best possible way, which is he knows what his story is and he does it the way it's supposed to be done. Not trying to convince you that it's like a story-driven spy novel or character-driven detective story. No, it doesn't fucking matter.
No. Yeah, and you're right. He does know it because the guy doesn't have a name. He's got about a sentence of backstory.
Yeah.
I can't even remember what it was. It was like
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. He lost his wife or whatever, but it's just like a single line that says, oh, I'm going to get revenge on anyone who's like a bad guy. Like,
yeah.
We have just been like blowing this thing up and just gloating, but I feel like we have to because this book was the first thing that we've read that actually wasn't like painful to flip the pages.
Yeah. This is the first time I'm coming to record an episode that I'm not shaking my head at the frustration of what I just consumed.
Yeah. I wasn't lied to, you know?
Yeah.
I got what the thing said it was.
Yeah.
In the previous cases, especially in the last case,
yeah.
was just, and I find that almost insulting. You know, it's kind of insulting. At least with this, no one could blame you if you picked it up and you expected what it says and you get what it, like, it really does give you, it delivers. It delivers like the specialist delivers.
Yeah. It delivers hard. The first words you read in this story are an epigraph quoted from General George S. Patton that says, "In case of doubt, attack." And in the way that Apocalypse Deception set the scene with a deceitful line about preparing you for what you're about to read, as in an awesome, fast-paced action story, this one, just like the rest of the story, is frugal in getting you straight to the fucking point.
Oh, yeah.
It just gets you right in there, and it doesn't even have fucking chapter titles. It just says, one. Upstate New York. I surged along a dark and winding road toward a rendezvous with death.
Oh, my God.
And then we're just in it. So what's happening here? He's driving through the woods in his Jeep Apache SUV. The V8 HEMI engine is rumbling with 600 horsepower. The shadows of the forest are all around him, and he probes the area for threats with his combat senses.
Yeah. It's so funny, because he's coming up here, and you already know what he's about to do. And all the names are like Devil's Creek. You know, everything is heading towards that cataclysmic event, and he's bringing the arsenal of death along with him.
Yeah, and so the first character we're really introduced to is not the specialist, is it?
Oh, no. No.
It's his fucking black-coated Desert Eagle 50 caliber autoloader hand cannon, which he calls Warhammer.
Oh, fuck yeah, dude. And not only is it called Warhammer, what's the ammunition that it's packing?
It's packing that cobalt tungsten bullets that deliver 1,250 foot-pounds of impact energy.
That's so good. In my trade, there was no such thing as too much firepower. There was no such thing as overkill. and no, there isn't.
No, there isn't. And he returns to the theme of overkill at the end, but we'll get to that. Now, it's important to notice that this time the character names his gun, just like Dominic Long named Bessie and Belle. But the kind of name this one actually has a purpose, and it actually tells us what it's actually used for. And it's done with style. He tells you everything he's wearing, what the vehicle is, what the engine is, what the horsepower is, the Mudclaw tires, his SWAT-type Kevlar helmet, the Nomex flame-resistant gloves, and his Ultimax Commando light machine gun.
Yeah, and his polycarb goggles and his Alice webbing, like,
Yeah, it's straight to the fucking point, and it's not just an endless meandering ramble with no point to the indulgence.
And while I would say that, in other stories where those things are less meaningful, I would say that that's a bad thing to describe everything like that.
Yeah.
Because if you tell me he's a soldier, I can just assume that he's got some, like, Kevlar on and all that shit.
Yeah.
But in this, it's the whole story. That's the whole thing. Like, if that wasn't in there, the story would just be an empty shell.
Yeah.
And it's also a strange story to read because it's not like written in paragraph styles. It's like every single line is its own paragraph.
Yeah, I don't think there's a single sentence in this whole book that's more than 10 words. It's so punchy.
Yeah, it is punchy. And it reads like, when I was reading this, it sounded to me like it was written by a character like Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
Because that's how Judge Dredd talks, he talks in these, like, one-line sentences.
Yeah, and the most important thing I notice about this, in contrast with the other books we've read, is that the indulgence is locked to the character rather than the narration. So you get things like him telling you everything he's wearing and what it's used for, but it's not overdone in the way that it's trying to be cool and stylish. He just says, I'm wearing Kevlar fucking assault armor, and it's good for blocking bullets. Like, that's it. I'm wearing them Nomex flame-resistant gloves so that if I catch on fire or something, I'll be good. Like, he doesn't spend all this time telling you how fucking cool it is.
Yeah.
It just tells you what it's for, and that makes it cool.
And it is funny because it's almost like the whole book is his inner dialogue, and he's saying, like, this is really going to help me out later when I get into, like, a jam, and survival is key in a situation like this. And it really goes on in a bit of a lone man who's obsessed with vengeance and murdering bad guys.
Yeah.
But it makes sense in that context for him to, like, always double check his gear and his ammo, and it doesn't sound forced or it doesn't sound out of character. Everything he does fits exactly who he is.
Yeah.
And the best part about it is you don't get any exposition about who this character is.
No.
He's just called the Specialist, and that's all you need to know.
Yeah, we don't need 60 pages of setting up a character like this, who is just an empty shell to fuel the madness of revenge. He just says, I was searching for my target, Anton Zorin. He was a vicious mob boss, and I meant to kill him. Like, that's it. That's all you get.
Yeah.
And, the Specialist, he's cocky a bit, but he's smart about it, He goes in saying, I could not defeat an entire army in one strike. I was not John Rambo. But he kind of is.
Yeah, he kind of is. And there's actually multiple John Rambo references. So you know that he's sort of calling out, but it's not like a stupid call out.
Yeah.
Later in the book, there's like a little thing where it's like he walks into one of the Russian mob houses or whatever to try get some info from someone.
Yeah.
And there's a movie playing on TV and it's John Rambo.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a little wink, but it's not done too badly. And it's just like a single sentence. And it's just like, oh yeah, I know,
Yeah. It's not like China Strike ripping off the elements of Shawshank Redemption.
And multiple other things.
So that's it. That's all the story context you need. He's a badass dude who's trying to take down Russian mob bosses. He's looking for his target in the woods, but he doesn't find him there. Only the goons are present.
Yeah.
But the Specialist, he doesn't really waste opportunities.
No.
So he whips out a fucking bazooka and launches it at the goons, at their airplanes, which is carrying a drug shipment, of course. The rocket launcher blows up the fucking plane, and a propeller blade flies off and decapitates one of the goons.
Oh, man! There's so much, like, decapitation and head explosion and stuff. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, so, like, where we would normally talk about, like, the story and the elements of character, we're just basically going to go through the things that happen in the action scenes, because that's all there really is, and that's all you really need. The goons that don't get blown up by the rocket launcher head after him, and he shreds them with his commando light machine gun.
Oh, yeah.
After that, some more SUVs show up, and the Specialist whips out Warhammer, which he blasts away at the mobsters, shooting them. And he shoots one of them who's wielding a shotgun, and the shotgun explodes.
It's so funny because, like, every time, it really is done like one of those action movies where every single, like, bullet makes the enemy either explode or, like, knocks them so far backwards. It always says, Warhammer launched the Bravadia thug 30 meters backwards. It's like the most like ridiculous shit ever.
Yeah, and it's so funny. It's just like Warhammer spoke and it was a single awesome word.
Yeah. Boy!
So, I mean, that's the first scene. He rips apart the rest of the goons with Warhammer until a motherfucking helicopter shows up. He launches another rocket at his tail. It doesn't quite detonate. Afterwards, he retreats into the forest and pulls out his anti-personal mines.
It's so funny because, like, all the stuff you saw him loading up before in the very beginning, you know, like checking all his gear, he uses every single thing.
Yeah.
And he makes sure that
nothing is wasted.
Yeah, nothing that he told you about isn't being used. He also picks up other people's weapons and stuff like that. Everything gets its own description. Everything gets its own little scimitar round salvo. Every single time he shoots the gun, he does like a different shape. He'll be like, I did a zigzag with the Uzi, or I did a figure eight with the...
Yeah, it's so amazing.
It is so John Rambo, though.
And one of my favorite things is how many times he refers to the fact that he's launching power strikes.
Yeah.
He blows up a few more goons, and they chase after him, and he's just like, I launched a few power strikes from my commando. But there's too many goons in the forest for him, so he climbs up a tree and readies Warhammer. After which he blows up a goon's head with it and steals his grenade launcher-mounted assault rifle. With all the goons down and the chopper remaining, the specialist launches a grenade at the chopper and then clips the landing gear. He fires one more and it lands dead center. The hello fucking crashes. The specialist heads back to his jeep and flees into the night. Chapter 2. Like, that's the scene. That's the whole scene.
And, you know, it really is just... It's a breeze. There's no part that you feel slowed down or it's clunky or you want to skip over or there's no meaningless exposition or anything like that. It's just one scene after the next the whole way through. It's so good.
Yeah, it's like a rapid fire from one of his fucking machine guns.
Yeah, it's a figure eight salvo from the AKSU assault rifle.
So in chapter 1, his guy Zorin wasn't there. So he's off to try and get him in another location. And this is where we get just a bit of background about the specialist, that he was in the Green Beret, just like Mark Stone.
Ooh. But where Mark Stone knows jack shit about combat, the specialist knows everything.
Yeah.
I gotta keep going back to it because he always names things. So whenever even if it's just a passing car, he's like, that's an Escalade, like, or that's a Toyota, like, whatever the fuck. He names every single thing.
So he's in the Green Beret, and he's a secret assassin for something called Project Brimstone, which is so much more badass than MIA Hunter.
Yeah, come on.
I can't understate that. So in the second chapter, he's rolling up to an estate on some sort of private marina. And of course, it's covered in goons. The first one he slices the throat of and pulls out an Uzi to dispatch another with scimitar hardpoint bullets. So after he slays the first guys at the marina, he kills a few more sentries and launches a Wasp micro drone to scout out the area. With it, he spots a bunch of gunners and perches himself on the wall of a mansion like a gargoyle. And he uses a dog whistle to attract the patrolling Dobermans. And he takes them out with a dart gun. And there's a really funny line where he says, I wish the Doberman sweet dreams. He was a pro hunter and I respected his mission. He was not my true enemy. He respects the fact that this dog is a trained killing machine, just like him. But the dog isn't his target.
Yeah.
His target are the filthy...
Bravadia drug-dealing thugs.
Yeah.
Now, this is where I want to come to one of my main points. Something that may be interesting in the story that I wouldn't have expected. And it's the specialist's love for animals and nature.
Yeah, true.
Now, this would be a very strange thing in a book like this, but throughout the book, you get tiny glimpses of just how much the specialist enjoys nature and respects animals.
Yeah.
Which is a kind of funny balancing game when you're just so, like, gnarly killing people all the time. But then in the first, he sees a bear. He sees a big bear.
Yeah.
And basically, him and the bear know, because they're both trained hunters, that, like, they mean each other no harm. And they just sort of, like, on you go. They just sort of nod at each other and the bear wanders off.
Yeah, the bear's not his hard target, and he's not his.
Yeah. Now, the dog, he has to take the dog out.
Yeah.
But he doesn't kill it.
No.
Now, he kills everyone else, but not the dog, because the dog's just doing, you know, what it's told, and he has respect for it. And you know that he brought those goddamn darts, you know, just in case.
He knew what he was facing in there.
Yeah, he knew exactly, and he was never going to shoot it.
My favorite interaction with an animal is later in the book when he is going through like a jungle setting and he meets like
a viper.
Yeah, he meets a viper and he pulls out his Tanto blade, which is 8 inches long and black-coated and razor-sharp. He talks about how he's a strong believer in edged weapons because they're efficient death dealers at close range. They never jammed or needed reloading, and they were damn near silent in trained hands. And the best part about this scene is that the Viper sees him with the Tanto and slinks back up into the tree, almost as if it knows that the specialist is more deadly than its venom.
Yeah. and it's really funny because every time there's interaction, you get a sort of sense that the animals know that the specialist is like, he's a hunter too, so I'm not going to attack him, you know? And he talks about, because he's in the swamplands of Florida, you know?
Yeah.
And he's always talking about how, like, the mud could be full of crocodiles or alligators or pythons and all these different things. And he's like, but, I don't want to get trapped by something. But he describes it in a way that is almost nice. Like, that this environment as a whole is a trained killer like him, you know? Everything, there are so many places, and he respects that.
Yeah.
And I want to bring it back to the fact that, in every book, you can see something about the author.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether or not you want to, when you write something, a lot of you comes out.
Yes.
Without you trying to do so. And perhaps this had some thought behind it, but I would say that the author, Zeke Mitchell, this is a man who loves nature, obviously. And even in a story about the specialist who just goes around killing mercilessly, still stops to smell the roses.
Yeah.
Still stops and appreciates the beauty of the landscape. And it's so good to see that, instead of what we usually find is like under the cuff racism or sexism or something like that. And the thing that's hidden is his love for nature.
And the thing I love about that is, whereas the themes of a story come through in the other books that we've read are either delivered in blatant exposition or they're spoken by a character, like the weird kind of philosophy of Sean Saunderson in Apocalypse Deception about how, like, oh, it wouldn't even be possible to see these girls like in another country. That's why America's so great. Zeke Mitchell, he doesn't need a character as a vessel for his opinion. He doesn't need pages of explanation to let you know that he loves nature. The actions and the interactions of the character with the story and the other characters come through off the page between the lines, almost like a book. You know what I mean?
It's strangely, it's like
it's almost like a book.
It's like I've become too jaded to recognize like that these things are actually normal things.
Yeah, and so it's funny that while this book has probably the least amount of actual story to it, it is essentially just a guy going after a mob boss, and there's not much like development going on. It actually speaks the most beyond the page.
Oh yes,
and that's what is exciting about it to me.
Yeah, and we get his love for animals, and we get his love for bloody John Rambo as well. And we get a definitely a fascination with military stuff. Again, we compare this to other works where they claim to be experts in tactical stuff.
Yeah. But you know what? I would describe this as not an obsession with weapons and military stuff, like, let's say, a bucket full of bullets, but a knowledge of those things.
Oh, yes.
Whereas Bucket Full of Bullets is just an obsession with guns and bullets and like shootouts and stuff. This is knowledge of those things. What kind of helicopter it is. That he's got his Maelstrom tactical boots and like...
Yeah, or what gyrojet projectiles do on impact with the human body. Like,
like so amazing.
I actually wrote in my notes like a gyro better than scimitars. But the gyrojet is like some sort of semi-automatic shotgun, and when you shoot it, it's like a rocket instead of like a shell.
Yeah.
He has like chemical like ones. He's got all different types, and he shoots these little rockets from the shotgun.
Yeah, my favorite one is the submachine gun with .45 Black Talon ammo, which when shot on impact expands into an 80 caliber round to pulverize flesh and bone, and he shoots it from a gun he calls Black Thunder.
Oh yeah. The names Black Thunder and Warhammer, I was really, really hoping that they'll be dual wield together, that he would take out Warhammer and Black Thunder at the same time, but he's not a Bessie and Bell kind of guy. He likes to hide behind a rock and shoot someone once with a pistol. He's not doing like too much ridiculous bullshit.
No, he's not a dumb action movie hero that just is a characterization of someone who's badass with guns. He is an actual badass with guns.
Yeah.
And his guns are badass too. Every time they fire off a round, it's like, Warhammer's muzzle breathed flame and spat thunder. A 50-round drugs drilled one man's sternum and flung him off his feet.
Yeah, it's like, Bessie and Belle, they come off so weak, they're just two Tommy guns that someone has a weird obsession over. But in this case, Warhammer's name is really, fitting, and, that thing is a Warhammer. It literally lifts people off their feet and sends them backwards. It's...
Yeah.
He makes people do somersaults with that shit. It's, of course it's going to be named.
Yeah. So, essentially, the end of Chapter 2, he shows up to the marina, and Zorin is there, but he manages to escape. So, the specialist gets into another massive gunfight. He drops down from the wall, where he's acting like a gargoyle, and lands in a fighting crouch. The alarms go off, and the Bravdas blast. However, the specialist whips out the flame-breathing, thunder-spitting muzzle of Warhammer, which he uses to take out several black Escalades, all of which are named, before finally making a stand at some sort of abandoned asylum. And there's an awesome shootout there. All these Escalades are showing up. He's like 1-on-10 or something, and he explodes the fuel tank of one of the Escalades. Some grenades are tossed, and everyone dies except the specialist.
Oh, yes. We say he's like a specialist and just a soldier who's good with guns, but he's phenomenally good.
Yeah.
Every time he shoots the gun, he hits, basically. I don't think he misses a single shot in the whole story.
Well, there are a couple of times where he does slip up. Let's say there's a line somewhere where he is trying to get into this room and he drops down onto a crate and he misses it, off target or something.
That's right. He does miss the helicopter.
Yeah.
With the rocket, I think. Or no, it just doesn't detonate.
Yeah, so I mean, he's extremely good at what he does, but he's not really in a bragging way about it. And the times he does slip off, he does acknowledge it and he says some funny things. He's like, I was ready to land on a sturdy crate 6 feet below. From there, it was a short hop to the floor itself. A simple move. Sure, no big deal. Anyone could do it. And then he tumbles sideways and doesn't land right on top of it. So he blows his chance at a silent entry. So some people show up and he whips out the Uzi.
Oh, yeah.
He whips out the room broom.
Oh, yeah.
And starts slaying people. Scimitar slugs are bearing into their skulls.
Scimitar tumbling rounds.
Yeah, and dissolving their skulls into crimson halos.
Yes, and vaporizing their chests into, pink mist.
Yeah. Now, there is a funny thing that he sort of does in that sometimes he's a little bit in doubt of himself, right? He always has these moments where he's like, I probed and discovered no sign of intrusion. No hitmen attacked me and all was calm. I checked again and drew a sharp breath. It was not paranoia. I was making sure. And then later, he passes by a movie theater on the way to one of his targets and he's like, maybe I'd catch the flick later, assuming I survived.
Yeah.
And then a couple lines down, he quits his Jeep or whatever. He quits a lot of Jeeps.
Yeah, he always quits that shit. He never gets out. He just quits it.
And so he leaves his truck and he's heading into the place and he's like, I hoped it would still be intact when I returned. If I returned.
Yeah. But I feel like he says that because he doesn't think that he's actually going to die. But he just he needs to mentally be all in.
Yeah.
And, he needs to, so he's prepared to die, He's prepared.
Yeah, and just another scene later, he cuts through some wires and a fence, and he's like, my work would stand casual inspection in the dark, and that was enough for now. I would be long gone before the cuts were discovered, unless I was killed.
It's so funny, though, because that's actually how you read it. In my head, I just always imagine this guy, squinting.
Yeah.
Crouching down somewhere with his pistol, and then his eyes always just squint harder when he says stuff like that. Squint!
So after he survives the assault at the mansion, he's going to another Russian safe house. His main target, his hard target, Zorin, is gone. So he's going to try and get one of his minions.
Petrov is his name.
Yeah, Petrov. So he shows up at this safe house. And this time he's going in a bit of stealth.
Yeah.
He says he peered at the warehouse through slitted eyes.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
He says, sudden anger rocked me. A sudden surge to strafe the building with my Uzi.
Oh.
He says, but no.
Oh, you can't do that.
But no, my task called for caution. It called for stealth. And that's when I was like, this guy's clearly not MIA hunter material, because if he was, he would go up in that bitch with his broom and just spray.
Yeah, just start mowing down.
Yeah.
Now, this is quite a funny interaction because Petrov is in the house.
Yeah.
And he knows where his boss, Zorin, is.
Yeah.
And he wants to get that info out of him. But unfortunately, there is a bit of a kerfuffle.
Yeah. When he falls on the crate, the people are alerted.
Yeah, he has to take a couple of people out.
Then he gets the Uzi out.
And Petrov gets a delicious figure 8 implanted into his chest from the scimitar rounds.
Yeah.
And that's the end of him.
So he slays his target and he doesn't get any information from him. And now he's trapped in this warehouse with lots of stalking goons, which he proceeds to slay. And then he whips out the fucking Vulcan incendiary grenades and burns the filthy den to ash.
Oh, yeah.
He splits, but not before he catches a magnum round in his shoulder, but the Kevlar vest's got him covered.
Oh, yes.
He escapes, and he meets up with a secret snitch contact to find his real target's location. But, like we said, the snitch gets splattered by a Saiga shotgun instantly.
Oh, yeah.
So the specialist peels out and baits the attackers into like an alleyway so he can funnel it with scimitar rounds. There's more slashing blasts, more scarlet hazes, and the specialist does more figure 8s with his Uzi.
Yep.
An Escalade blitzes towards him and he scimitars it straight off the fucking bridge.
It's so funny how, like, he has all this gear, he has all these weapons, and he takes them and they are just so effective. Send this man into any combat zone and you will see results. That fucking Uzi just obliterates everybody.
Yeah. Now, there's a funny line at the end of this chapter because he's basically just had a crazy shootout in the middle of the street in upstate New York. And he's talking about how when he's leaving, he hears on the radio, there was breaking news about tonight's combat. The talking heads were blabbing about gang warfare and the need for strict gun control. And it says, at a red light, I checked the Uzi's load and verified it was ready for action. That was my gun control. I was like, man, the specialist, what a fucking badass.
Yes, and just above that, there was also another line while he's riding in the car, where he says, I did not want my actions recorded on someone's iPhone and posted to social media. I had no interest in likes on Facebook. And I was like, didn't think you did.
Yeah, he's a little insecure, I find. Like the moment where he drops onto the crate, he's like, oh, it was a simple jump. Anyone could do it. It was like,
yeah,
sure, man. Didn't really need to mention that. No one was questioning your capabilities, man. We believe it. We believe you're a badass.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not interested in those likes on Facebook.
Yeah, I don't need that. It's like, what are you going to do? Post your combat footage? Post you, like, blowing up people's heads?
Yeah.
But that's, again, what we're talking about, where the author is creeping through.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah, you don't care about likes on Facebook, but I really don't think the specialist cares at all about social media.
No.
I can narrow down his priority list to guns and killing bad guys.
Yeah. So he heads out to find his target's rival, one of the other mobsters, and he thinks that he can persuade him to give up the guy he's looking for, Zorin's location. So he's stalking through this like woodland retreat.
Pine Barrens.
Yeah, and he says he was wary of the Jersey Devil. It was a man-eating monster said to inhabit the Barrens. Of course it was a legend, but the monsters I were battling were very real. Like all monsters, they would sow terror and torment until they were stopped, until they were slain.
I also really enjoyed the reference to the Jersey Devil. I don't know why that sort of came up, but I guess he's in New Jersey, and why not make a mention to the Jersey Devil?
It fits the theme, it fits the style.
Yeah, because the specialist always has these brief moments where it's like his mind wanders off to something normal for a second, and then he's back to, like, that's his, like, fault. He's not 100% vengeance-orientated.
Yeah.
He does have moments of reality where he's like, maybe I should watch that movie, or I remember the Jersey Devil, like, you know, all these little tiny things that keep you going, oh, he is a real person. He's not just a machine.
Yeah, he doesn't just love killing people, and so that's why he's going after these mob bosses. He does have some moments in the beginning where he's like, these crooks, they're so evil, you know, they're the ones sowing death with their drugs.
To provide your gang was a plague, a toxic plague.
Yeah, and there's a line right before he kills the final bad guy, Zora, and he's like, I scowled and conceded there was no final antidote to human evil. Because he's like, well, you know, I killed this main mob boss, but
there's always going to be more, yeah.
So, you know, he does have some inner conflict.
I mean, like, how many hits can the Russian mob take? Like, he literally kills, I think he kills, like, just under 100 people.
Yeah, I don't know, I wasn't counting. It's too many.
Yeah, well, like, I mean, the number is a little bit bit fudgy because there are like some things where you're not sure how many people were in that Escalade he just blew up. You don't know, but there must have been quite a few.
Yeah, speaking of Escalades, when he's going through the Woodland Retreat, the first thing he does is launch a dragon rocket at another black Escalade. From his ATAC launcher, which he says is a reliable death dealer, a bringer of fire and fury.
Yeah.
So he stows the launcher and he gets out Warhammer. And the first thing he does with it is he shoots a goon off an ATV who backflips off the ATV, and then he shoots him again in the air.
Oh, yes. I love how it's written as well. It says, explosive impact wrenched the driver from his seat, and he backflipped across the ATV. Like, I just look at that, and I'm like, oh, shit, boy. He was airborne for a moment, with flailing arms and legs. Another .50 drilled him in midair, and he pinwheeled through a crimson spray. His raptured corpse slammed onto the ground, and his AK spun from sight. It's so, like... like, how badly did you need to kill that one goon?
Yeah.
Shooting him in midair. Like, oh my God.
Yeah. And so, that writing is everywhere. It's so punchy and so visceral. And whereas, like, there are other scenes, like in Bucket Full of Bullets, where that kind of writing is present and it feels over the top. And it's probably just because of what we said, this isn't surrounded by a bunch of shit to make you think it's badass. It just is badass. And the flow of the sentences matches the intensity of the situation.
Yes.
And so that's why you're in it. You're there. You're feeling the tension. I felt fucking tense reading this because I'm just like, man, there's goons on all sides. It's 30 against 1, but, as if that fucking matters for the specialist. He's got everything covered.
It's like he writes the name of every single enemy he's going to kill on every single bullet he loads into the mag.
Yeah.
He's got it. Every single one is planned out.
Yeah, so he power strikes a bunch of goons with his scar. He fires off some more dragon rounds at another helo. More scarlet pulp as he shreds the pilot with power strikes. And he finally gets the location of his true hard target, which he's facing off with this dude. And he implores him to do one last good deed.
Please, you're already dead. Just tell me where he is.
Yeah, and he just says one word. Glades. And so the specialist is off to the Glades, the Florida Everglades.
Yep. So he's got Black Thunder and he's got his UMP. Now, this is something that I'm going to say was stupid as shit. There is so many acronyms in this, but there's also times where he explains what the acronym means.
Yeah.
And he's like, I carried a Heckler and Koch UMP. And then next line is, that meant Universal Maschinenpistole. And then he says, it was German for Universal Submachine Gun. It's like, come on, boy, like what the fuck?
Yeah, and then at another point, he's like, this weapon was good for CQC, which meant close quarters combat.
Yeah, and it's like, come on, you don't need to spoon feed it that badly, Like, talk more about, like, the shit I don't know, like what sort of ammo it has, or what they do on impact.
Yeah, you're already impressing me enough with the Black Talon ammo and the Scimitar rounds and the Cobalt Tungsten Steel bullets. Like,
oh, yeah.
I'm fucking sold on your knowledge of this stuff,
By the way, those Black Talons, they expand to a massive .80 caliber. They pulverize flesh and bone. It was a wicked anti-personal design. Like, ooh.
Yeah, and so when he fires that thing off, man, Black Thunder coughed once and spat death. It's so stylish.
And, it's another great scene where he's loading up for this final fucking mission, and it doesn't just talk about the guns. He also talks about, like, what he's wearing, and normally I would criticize such a thing, that he says, I wore a jungle camouflage garb and a rib-stop boonie hat. The garb was vented for cooling, and made from water-repellent T420 nylon. And it's like... That seems like overkill, like you probably didn't need to tell me that.
Yeah.
But it fucking actually comes into play later on.
Not like a Bucket Full of Bullets where the 50-round drum doesn't play into the story at all compared to the 20-round one.
No. But, even all the stupid little shit, like the ribstop boonie hat and stuff like that, that does get a mention later on in an action scene. So everything is actually thought about. It's not just stupidity.
Yeah, this isn't Chekhov's gun, the story. This is Chekhov's whole fucking arsenal.
Yeah, Chekhov's fucking underwear, like...
So when he's going through the swamp, he fucking decapitates a Bravda with his Bushmaster machete.
Oh my god, yeah, I forgot about that. The other decapitation that he does.
Yeah, he gets an RPG fired at him, and this is where he loses most of his gear, but he's still got Black Thunder.
Oh, yeah.
So when a couple of airboats arrive, the specialist blows one up with a well-tossed grenade, and takes the other one's driver out with Black Thunder.
Yeah. Now, we should mention that he did go to get Zorin, but he once again alerts the alarm and then has to get out of there, and he hasn't seen Zorin or anything like that, so he just assumes that he's going to get away again.
Yeah, and he's sort of overwhelmed by the forces in the jungle, and he has to retreat a little bit. And so he says, I had to put Zorin out of mind and focus on the stone-cold mechanics of survival. There was no damn choice. And it's just like, China Strike failed so hard at the whole, there's a bullet with my name on it, but not this time. Like, that dialogue, I just sunk back and cringed.
Yeah.
And when I read this, I'm like, oh yeah, there's no choice for the specialist, man. He's outnumbered.
Yeah.
He's got to retreat. He's got to go back and get some more
scimitar rounds. He's got to get another pair of bloody polycarb goggles. Now, the area he's in, there's like a low-lying river, and they have watercraft, this hovercraft with the propeller at the back. But there's lots of mud and roots and deep water, and it's treacherous terrain, you could say.
Yeah.
And it does come into play. And again, coming back to his love of nature, we get another thing for it. And it's not just the bigger animals that he cares for, but it's also the insects.
Yeah.
He finds early in the chapter that they've been executing people and throwing them into the bog, because the insects and stuff eat them away.
Yeah.
And he examines these, corpses, and he's like, oh, they've been executing people here. But he does also reflect on how the natural process is amazing. And he's like, there was a natural process and it happened fast. Microbes and insects and other scavengers devoured blood and soft tissue. They left only bones. The stench of death was minimal. The swamp was one massive waste recycling unit. After all, it was a natural reclamation project. He just goes off on this tangent of how effective the swamp is at doing, and all the different, little insects. And he does later on in the same chapter, he's getting shot at and he's half buried in mud and behind a tree root. Oh, what does he call it? A cypress knee.
Yeah, he knows the fucking tree type.
Yeah. So he's crouched behind this thing and a big cockroach jumps on his neck and crawls under his shirt and he doesn't even care. He's like, doesn't matter. It's just a little insect. I'm not going to hurt it.
Yeah. If anything, he's like, don't worry, cockroach, you'll be protected under my Kevlar.
Yeah, he puts it in one of his mole tactical pouch. So this love for nature is just incredible. It's just so funny.
Yeah, it is amazing how elements of the character seep through without him having to give you his biography like Mark Stone or something.
Yeah, and it's almost as if he's trying to hide the fact that he loves nature so much.
Yeah.
He's like, the bear was just another hunter, but really, he's just like, oh, fuck, it's a bear, man, that's so dope.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want to say it like that,
So eventually he finds Zorin, and I want to get to my favorite part, which Zorin somehow found himself as a part of the fight.
Yeah, he didn't run away, he stayed to fight.
Yeah, it says, a figure crouched on the mud and he was dazed and injured. A Tokarov pistol spouted from his fist and that made him a deadly threat. I peered closer and made a positive ID. It was Anton Zorin. He had joined the hunt instead of fleeing the camp. I could respect that decision, but there was no free pass. So Zorin is injured and he says, doesn't have to end like this. We can make a deal, right? And the specialist just says one word. Wrong. I hit the UMP's trigger and Black Talons bored in a near point-blank range. Zorin's face exploded into scarlet fragments, and one eyeball erupted from its socket. Another Black Talon barrage hammered his chest and wrenched him off his feet. He twisted like a human corkscrew and twitched on the mud and went stiff. The Tokarov spun free and vanished into the swamp. I stepped close and emptied the UMP's magazine into Torrent's mangled fucking corpse. And that's what he says.
It was not overkill. It was making sure.
And that's almost like the fucking punch, right? We've been saying, well, is this overkill? Is it not? I don't think so.
No.
And I think, is the writing overkill or is it not? I don't think so. The story knows what it is. The character knows who he is. And the story is almost commenting on itself, saying, no, it's not overkill. It's making sure. It's making sure that everything is in its place. It's making sure that, the action is solid.
Yeah.
There's no fat. It's efficient. It's quick, just like The Specialist.
Yeah. And it's a good tie-up because finally a story that comes full circle.
Yeah. So, the only real criticisms I guess I could say I have of this is that because that structure is so like sentence by sentence, only 10 words, every single sentence is like an action scene in itself.
Yeah.
That structure makes it snappy, but it can also get kind of monotone at times.
Oh, yes, for sure.
So it can be exhausting to read.
Yeah.
Because it's just so fast-paced. It's so packed with stuff.
Yeah. There was a lot of over-explanation, like we were talking before, about the close quarters combat and the UMP, and it's like, you could skip over stuff like that, and you could also probably put some goddamn commas in. Commas don't ruin snappy sentences. They just make a lot of them more reasonable. And there were like grammatically incorrect sentences in the way that you actually need a comma there because the sentence doesn't make sense without it.
Yeah. But just like The Specialist, the author doesn't compromise on his style. And I do respect that.
Yes. And it's funny because I've never read something that doesn't have commas in it. Everyone likes to use commas. And the fact that he has it and made such a point about not using commas, it's almost like, could you fault him?
Yeah.
Like, for the story, I mean, I guess.
Some longer sentences, some variation would have been nice to really soak in on some of those details.
Yeah.
But honestly, there's just no time for it.
Yeah.
There's no time for it in what the story is trying to achieve. And in the end, the story sticks to its guns.
Yes.
And that is admirable.
Now, I have high praise for the fact that there was no stupid tangent where it goes off into something that the book shouldn't be about, like some sort of love interest or some other thing,
Yeah.
You have delivered what you promised.
Yeah.
Zeke Mitchell. I mean, it really is what you said it was going to be.
And thank you for that.
Yeah, and thank you. Really what we needed. Really what we needed.
Yeah, this is the book that we wish we followed with Depth of Reality Unknown, because after that, we were looking for something that would, like, hype us up, and man, we got tricked. And so I'm very happy to know that this is following Apocalypse Deception, because fuck that book.
Yeah, fuck that book.
This is the book that I wanted to read when I was looking through Apocalypse Deception, and that book failed to deliver so hard.
You're just lost for words. Yeah. Would you say that Anton Zorin was the hard target, or is The Specialist the hard target?
Ooh, now that's a good question.
Or are they both hard targets? Because he does compare himself to Anton a lot throughout the book, and he goes, we're actually not so different. We're both just trained killers, and he does his thing and I do my thing. And it's kind of like the Batman and Joker type relationship where, like, they sort of feed off each other.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how Zorin feeds off him, but it does have that dynamic.
Well, he eats tungsten rounds. So.
Yeah, he gets a lead belly from that. Now, there are lots of decapitations. If you're a decapitation fan, there's a decapitation from helicopter propeller.
Yep.
There's a decapitation from a Bushmaster machete. There's also another propeller decapitation, so let's make that decapitation number 2 by propeller because of the hovercraft.
Yeah.
The hovercraft crashes and the guy's head gets rammed in and just obliterated by the bloody thing.
Yeah, this book has the highest propeller decapitation rate of all the books we've looked at.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's incredible. If you're a fan of decapitations, definitely pick this book up. If you're a fan of Russian mobsters getting what they deserve, pick this book up.
Yeah.
If you're a fan of reading about tactical gear, or if you're a lobbyist for Picatinny Arsenal,
Yes, so many guns from that.
he's talking about guns, and then he's just like, "Oh, this is another deadly thing from Picatinny Arsenal." Just by the way, it's Picatinny Arsenal. Like it's it's like.
Sponsored by Picatinny Arsenal.
Sponsored by, yeah. So, if you're a fan of Picatinny Arsenal, definitely pick this one up, because you will not be disappointed. You'll see lots of characters from your favorite Arsenal there.
Yes. I'm definitely going to say this is the first book that I would actually recommend you read from our show.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter that we talked about the ending or the character or the story at all. You're not reading it for that.
No.
You're reading it for the prose, because the prose is awesome.
Yeah.
You're reading it for the scenes and just the absolute insanity that occurs in them.
Yeah.
So I say this with full confidence. Go pick this up. You will enjoy it.
It's very cheap. What was it priced at? Can we get a price on it?
I don't remember.
It was like $1, wasn't it?
Sorry, couldn't find that page. What? Is it gone?
No.
Is it gone?
Uh,
Is it gone, dude? It's not here.
Impossible, dude.
It's gone. Why? Why is this one gone? What? No way. Where is it? I'm going to find Zeke Mitchell's page. He's also gone.
What?
No fucking way.
The fuck?
Why?
What the fuck?
Okay, well, it seems like Hard Target is gone from Amazon, and so are all of Zeke Mitchell's books. Okay, well, this is the first time that I am actually sad to see that a book has been removed. The other books that we've reviewed that have been removed, such as Sword Immortal Online and Depth of Reality Unknown, I consider it a service to humanity that they were pulled from sale. But this is devastating.
Yeah.
Why? Why does this keep happening to us?
Maybe there's some sort of problem. Weird. I can find Zeke Mitchell on Amazon, but he has nothing under his, name.
Well, for one reason or another, his books have been taken down. Perhaps on purpose by him, or perhaps not. We don't know.
I can't see why, unless he's got some sort of copyright infringement, because Hard Target is also the name of that bloody Jean-Claude Van Damme movie.
I don't know. I really don't.
So strange. Wow, that's really disappointing. Why?
Okay. Well, if you can find a copy of Hard Target, buy it. That's all I can really say at this point.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the oddly emerging purpose of this show to catalog these books that just disappear from reality continues with Hard Target.
What a somber and sad way to end.
Yeah, I'm...
That's quite disappointing. Well,
next time we're going to be reading a book called...
Next time...
What's the book we're going to read next week called, Kim?
Well, next week we are looking at something that we originally put off in favor of Hard Target, actually.
Yes.
Because we really wanted to find something that we thought was going to be really good, you know? So we did look for hours and hours and hours for that book, but in the meantime, we did find another book, and that book is called The Manatee Murders. What do you think about that, Brady?
I can't imagine what it's about.
You can't imagine what it's about? Well, let me fill you in with a little synopsis. When 3 beheaded manatees are discovered floating in Pine Island Sound, Detective Doug Shearer begins one of the most intense investigations of his career. A local commercial fisherman is arrested, but when 2 more manatees wind up dead, Doug suspects that there's more than just one killer. With the aid of prosecutor Roger Bartlett, Doug endeavors to solve the crime, even as his personal life falls into shambles. Will he be able to pick up the pieces in time? Wow.
All right. So this is a hard-hitting detective story about some...
beheaded manatees.
who have passed before their time.
Yeah, I don't think manatees have had enough time in the sun, to be honest. They're overlooked as far as animals and novelizations, you know. You've got some pretty good stories about dogs and cats and horses. And where are the manatee novels?
Yeah, where are the manatee novels?
They're vegetarian, ocean-dwelling mammals. I don't know what else to say about it. They're fucking just giant manatees.
And unfortunately now 3 of them are headless.
Yes, and fucking Detective Doug Shearer is on the case.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that.
Now, is it going to be good?
I don't know.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be...
The manatees are murdered, but the real question is, will the manatee murders murder us?
I think we shan't be surviving that one. This may be the last book in the series before we both...
Just close up shop.
Thank you everyone for listening and supporting the show. And please, if you can, support us on Patreon, and doubly so, share our podcast with your friends. It's a huge help, and thank you to all of those who already do that. If you have a book you want us to look at, share it with us on one of our platforms and we'll consider it for the show. Thanks!